Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you tonight on the Nader Narrative. I'm really excited to bring a great person to you tonight, former Congressman Michael Pappas. Welcome to the show.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for allowing me to participate and talk with you tonight.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on. You are running for Senate, State Senate in District 16. Of course, we know Senator Kip Bateman is retiring after so many years, such long service to our state. You have decided to step up in his stead and run for this seat. Now, this is a very crucial race. I think it's important for people to know who you are, what your background is. You're a former congressman. So, Mike, give us the whole details on Congressman Pappas.
Well, thank you so much. I did serve in the United States Congress, and it was my honor to do so. Public service, I think, is very important. And what motivates me is I want to try to help solve problems. People of New Jersey are facing unprecedented challenges, especially this past year. The effects of the pandemic, certainly the human toll that we have seen. Yeah. My wife and I know several people that have contracted it, a couple of people that passed away from it. So it has hit close to home for us. And the public health officials and the frontline medical professionals have really done an amazing job. But the other part of the tragedy is the economic impact that it's had. The fact that 1/3 of all small businesses in New Jersey have closed permanently because of the shutdown. I think it's nothing short of a tragedy that has taken place. The inconsistencies of the state's edicts about closing small businesses when large businesses that sold the exact same products or provided the exact same services, they were allowed to remain open. Right. No logic from my perspective. And I, as you probably know, I served in the United States Small Business Administration for a number of years in the aftermath of 9/11. I see many parallels between then and now. The broad spectrum of businesses that were adversely impacted from the economic injury that our country faced in the aftermath of 9/11, very similar to what I've seen here. It's very unusual to see that the widespread impact. And so I know that what we were able to do then, we took limited resources of the federal government and we helped the small businesses recover. Yeah. Here, I don't see the same commitment and the same sense of urgency that I know we felt at the SBA back then. And so I think that makes me uniquely qualified to serve. When I was in the Congress, I served on the Small Business Committee of the House of Representatives. This is something that's always been near and dear to my heart. And I know that because of my understanding of the challenges of small businesses, came from a family-owned small business, and understand the challenges that they face, and what we've seen this past year cannot be repeated.
No, definitely not. And I agree, you're uniquely qualified, not only because you served on a national level, but because you were involved with the SBA and all the things that you saw. And, you know, small businesses, the backbone of our economy, you either own one or you work for one, most likely. And so it should concern everyone. So I want to talk about a little bit, we're going to get to the Murphy response and all the damage that's caused and how you look at that. I want to talk about your district a little bit, though. It spans like 4 different counties, correct? Hunterdon, Mercer, Middlesex, and Somerset. Now, what's interesting about your district is when you look at registrations, it's got about 20,000 or so more registered Dems, excuse me. So really the story this year, which it often is the independents. What about your message do you believe resonates with independents and maybe even some soft Democrats?
Well, we conducted a poll not that long ago, and my opponent, Andrew Zwicker, and I are tied at 44% each. The balance of people are undecided. We also found that the unaffiliated voter are breaking our way on a 2-to-1 by a 2-to-1 margin. And as I have campaigned with my running mates, Vinnie Panico and Joe Lukac, who are running for the state assembly, we have found in the approximately 5,000 homes that we have visited, knocked on doors, about 5,000 homes so far, besides events that we attend, that people are frustrated. I believe that what we are hearing from people on a one-to-one basis, what's reflected in that poll, is an indication of what will occur. Now, I'm not resting on my laurels. We are campaigning every day. There are 14 municipalities in this legislative district. Runs from the Delaware River, across up into Somerset County and down into Mercer and Middlesex, as you've suggested or outlined. The response has been great. The people that we have encountered are upset. You know, my opponent, I mentioned Andrew Zwicker. He's in the state assembly. He's been in the office a number of years. The name ID and my poll that we conducted shows he and I about at the same point. What does that say? That says that he's been in office recently for a few years now, 4 or 6 years. His name ID is no different than myself, who's been out of office for a number of years. So what does that say? It says something about him. It may say something about the fact that people remember me and someone who fought for them.
Well, you've served nationally, you've served locally, you've certainly done a lot in public service. As we look back on the past 18 months and the response of the Murphy administration, I don't even want to say that. Let's just say the response of Murphy, since he's crowned himself king and all decisions come from him, has done a lot of damage to the state. As you look back on all of that, what would you deal with first when you get in as a senator for us in January? What would be your first focus to fix this damage?
Well, I would sit down with the resources that are available to small businesses. The U.S. Small Business Administration is one. New Jersey has the Economic Development Authority. There are other technical assistance providers, small business development centers. There are a host of organizations that are in existence to help small businesses. I would try to ask them all to meet, talk about where are their gaps, what are the limited resources that the federal government has, that the state government has, local government. Is there any overlap, or are there gaps where they could somehow come up with a hybrid program to try to help those? Government cannot be the answer to everyone's challenges. I don't pretend to suggest that, but I do have an understanding of the existing programs at all levels of government. I think that that would be one of the first things that I would want to do. But then I would also do this, Elizabeth. Constitutionally, the legislature has an oversight responsibility over the executive branch.
Right.
I'm a member of the state Senate, no matter who the governor is, and it remains to be seen who the next governor will be.
Right.
I'm hoping it will be Jack Ciattarelli, but whoever it is, they need to be held accountable. The present legislature, the majority in the legislature, has not held the governors or his cabinet secretaries accountable.
Right.
We've seen the stories of the DMV. I've told stories about people waiting hours with appointments, unemployment, people waiting months and months to get their applications even acknowledged. It makes me speechless. And where has Andrew Zwicker been? Where has the majority party in the legislature been to hold them accountable? They've been nothing more than rubber stamps.
Correct.
And I won't be a rubber stamp no matter who the governor is.
Yeah, we need that balance back. It's just simply not operating the way it was intended. And of course, it's gotten worse with passing the bill that allowed him to keep his emergency powers in place. We all know, how out of control this is. So, there's the view of what he's already done and the mistakes and the things that have not been corrected. He promised to improve infrastructure. The new budget has, and I'm talking about technical infrastructure, has no money going towards technical infrastructure. So we can't improve the motor vehicle. We can't get the systems to talk to each other. But let's talk also not only about what he hasn't done and all that happened in the past 18 months, but really the threats of the loss of freedoms that face all of us in this state. I know you side on the side of freedom. I know you have. I've read that in your background. I know you believe that's very important. We're now facing the threat of potentially a shutdown again, potentially masking again. We don't know what's happening with vaccine requirements. We're seeing some mandates rolling out. Tell us where you stand on medical freedom, where you stand on the shutdowns, the masking, and how you would approach that if you were senator.
Well, starting with the shutdowns, because that had such a devastating impact and there was no recourse. There was absolutely no recourse.
Right.
I think that would be a mistake. I listened to Governor Murphy's press conferences, a bit of it today. I try to listen to them to hear myself directly what he is saying, or his associates, his cabinet secretaries are saying. He seems not to be pursuing any kind of a mask mandate or a shutdown at this point. He talked about a September 7th goal or deadline, if you will, for healthcare workers and vaccinations, and we'll maybe talk about that later. But I'm more concerned, most people are more concerned about, will he try to make things mandatory, or will he try to shut things down? One reporter said they don't think that he will because he's running for re-election. And he dismissed that as being not the case, that he's not making any decisions based upon politics. I can't judge his motives, but I can judge his actions. Yeah. And his actions have been inconsistent. Right. Again, I talked early in this interview about the large businesses versus small businesses, mom and pop stores being shut down for months and months, and many closing. I've known people that have actually lost their businesses. And there's no, it's not based on science. Right. It's not based on science. I talk to public health officials on a regular basis, and they talk about the vaccinations. And that last week I talked to someone, and there was in Somerset County, there was 41 new cases that had been reported that particular day. 34% of them were people who had been vaccinated. Right. And the public health officials are doing a tremendous job. They need more data over a longer period of time. I've asked those questions, and it's difficult for them to make specific recommendations because it's still relatively new to all of us. Right. But people should be able to make a choice. And I think that that's very, very important. An individual with their medical professional making a decision. Some people, I have a relative who is allergic to one of the components of one of the vaccine, the ingredients. The ingredients. Thank you. Yeah. And they can't take that. Right. And so, what do we do with those scenarios? And how are those people going to be treated? That's really critical. And I think that it's been politicized more than it should be. It's so politicized now. It's hard to know what the truth is. And I think people more and more are growing, distrustful of anyone that comes out and says that they have the answers. Really, this comes down to choice. And I think what we've seen, and I'm sure you would agree, that given the choice, Governor Murphy and his buddies in Trenton have chosen the rights of the government over the rights of the state, of the individual, every single time. Feels very un-American to us. I think being in a state like this that feels as though we've lost the chance to make some decisions for ourselves. Let's talk about schools as an example. Now we're looking at a big reaction by parents. You've seen a lot of them in the Board of Ed. How do you feel about the direction that some of these schools are taking in terms of curriculum changes, some that's coming from Trenton, in terms of deciding whether or not to mandate masks? That has come down from the governor, giving it to them to decide. Parents are reacting, Congressman. They're reacting strongly. Do you see a trend in that direction that parents will actually end up making a difference in the state for freedom? I think it's very important for parents to be able to make those decisions for their children. I know that school districts are independent agencies. They can make whatever decision that they choose to. Right. The guidelines that are issued by the CDC and then passed down from the State Department of Health are guidelines. I have had very pointed discussions with public health officials about that, making sure I understood how they define the word guideline versus directive. And it is a guideline. So school districts are making their own independent decisions about the masking and social distancing requirements. I've questioned the regionalization. They've grouped counties into regions, and public health officials also have told me that there's no basis from a public health perspective. There's no basis for the grouping of these counties. They're borders that really don't impact people's behavior. Mm-hmm. Someone lives in Somerset County and works in Middlesex County, they're crossing a regional boundary, and the data that they're using to make these recommendations are based upon the data of where the people reside, not where they go or where they work. And so, again, I'm not trying to be critical, but this is what two public health officials have said to me. There's no basis for it. So what is the state government basing their decisions upon. It's very confusing. And as I've had to delve into this, because I really want to make sure I understand, it is very unclear, and people are confused. People are fearful. There are many people who are very afraid, and I get that completely. Beginning of this pandemic, things were shut down. I don't fault anyone for taking that approach, but as time has marched on, the fear for many people has receded. For many, it has remained the same or heightened, and the inconsistency and the confusion of some of the statements that have been made by public officials have added to that.
Very damaging to the psyche of the people in this state. And I think you're right about the fear. It's not just fear of the virus, which has changed for a lot of people, but now there's a lot of fear about, are we losing our way of life? Or what will my children experience? What is their life going to be like? And I mean, switching gears, fear about economic situations. Let's talk about that, because this state is a mess economically. Our property tax is out of control. We've got the governor borrowing money that we didn't need, and now we've got debt service on that money. So there's a lot of fear around people thinking, hey, am I going to be able to stay here, afford this? Will my children, once they graduate from college, we're just going to be exporting all this talent. Can they stay here? We've got families that will have to split up geographically. This is a big issue, Congressman. How do we begin to really solve the financial woes of this state?
Well, we have to stop raising taxes. Andrew Zwicker has voted to raise the state income tax at least on 2 occasions. He's voted to tax healthcare, and he was part of the majority that voted for a $9.9 billion debt that will mortgage our children and our grandchildren's future. When we have a budget surplus. Now, I can't imagine the logic behind that. We need legislators who will understand that what they are doing is impacting people. I can't tell you, my wife and I were at a college graduation ceremony a few weeks ago. Half of the people there talking about their exit strategy. They can't afford to live here. They can't afford to live here now. They want to move their business out. That shouldn't be part of our conversation. It's a beautiful state. It's diverse. The landscape is beautiful. But you know, another thing that the legislature is doing, and guys like Andrew Zwicker, they're voting for programs that are great. For instance, requiring body cameras for all police officers. I support that as well. But guess what they didn't do? They didn't provide the funding. So one town has about a $500,000 price tag to outfit their police officers. The state provided less than a $200,000 grant. So the balance, over $300,000, has to be made out by local property taxes. They don't talk about that. No. Again, if it was that important, and I believe it is important, I would have supported that. You have to provide the funding, or you as a state legislator, Andrew Zwicker as a state legislator, is voting to raise property taxes. He can't avoid that.
Yeah,
that's just one program.
Right, one program that ultimately, what you're saying, results in higher property taxes. It's a direct connection once you look under the covers, but you have to look under the covers. And one of the issues we have as citizens in this state is we don't really have an audit of this budget. We don't really have an idea of these programs and where money is being spent. We need more visibility. If anything this past year has taught us is we need to know more, and citizens want to know more. We want people like you in positions of power that can open that up to us and tell us what's really going on. Don't you think we should be auditing a lot more in this state?
Yes, and there should be greater justification. You know, I'm the municipal administrator in a town. We had a couple of tough years with the COVID pandemic, loss in certain revenues. We had to reduce our budget. We had to lay off some people. And I approached it when I was directed to come up with a budget that would have minimal impact upon the taxpayers who also were struggling. I had to go to department heads and say, we have to reduce it by X%. If you want to propose the cuts, fine. If not, I will do it. But you have to provide direction. There has to be a vision for what you want to accomplish. It's not easy in one respect because you have to lay people off or you have to reduce a program or service. It's not an easy thing to do, and people depend upon those things. But it's simple in that you have to have the political will to make these difficult decisions. People have to do it that are struggling. If they're out of work,
Yeah.
They have a limited amount of money. They have to make decisions about
That's
what
right.
they're going to buy food. Are they going to pay their rent? Are they going to pay their
That's right.
mortgage? Are they going to pay insurance? They have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Well, the state of New Jersey, Andrew Zwicker and company, they haven't done that. They
Right.
just vote to raise taxes or go into debt, which is unnecessary. That's not defensible.
Not defensible. And you're right. As individuals, we have to find a way to make it all work. The government should be the same or even held to a higher standard. After all, it's our money that they're working with. Well, this is what we really need in the Senate. This is an important race. I want everyone who's listening to this not only to understand the depth of your background, Congressman. It's amazing that you've done what you've done for us publicly, not only in the national level, but definitely on the state level and the local level. And this position is incredibly key to the balance of power in the Senate. And of course, we're hoping to flip some seats this year, right? But also to bring someone like you with that intelligence to bear to finally hold everyone's feet to the fire. As we sort of wrap this up, I want you to tell people how they can interact with your campaign. I've been encouraging people outside of districts, when they see someone like you who is so strong and so important, to support, either in volunteering, financially, whatever they can do. I believe we have to do that with other districts. So tell people how they can interact with your campaign.
Well, very simple. Ppl LD16 stands for Pappas, Panico, Lukac, LD, Legislative District 16 is the best way to reach us. Ppl LD16, Facebook is the quickest way to reach us. We've had so much encouragement from people. We're having ice cream socials every Wednesday in the month of August. This Wednesday we'll be in Hillsborough at the Ice House, and we'll be in every county, Hunterdon and Middlesex and Mercer every Wednesday from 7 p.m. Hope that you can have an ice cream cone with us, and we can talk about what's of concern to you.
Yeah, that's great. That's so important. And again, if you're in the district, it's very, very key. I believe you're going to win this one, but we need everyone not to take that for granted, to step up and to really focus. Andrew Zwicker does not represent what we care about as free people, and he has a record to prove that. You have a record to prove that you do stand on the side of the people and freedom and common sense governing, frankly. That's what we need, Congressman. So I encourage everyone to interact with your campaign. We're going to have your assembly friends on next week, but we wish you all the best. One last message to your constituents as you look towards the November election.
Well, I've always been a hard worker. I'm someone who wants to roll up his sleeves and work with anyone, Republican, Democrat, Independent. I care about what is important to the people that I would hope to represent. I like to think that my background as a small business person, local official, trying to remain close to the constituency that I would represent or hope to represent, makes me sensitive to what they struggle with. And I would find it a privilege to be a member of the state Senate representing people of the 16th district.
You will do an excellent job for our state. And I believe next time you're on this show, I'll be calling you Senator Pappas. So the best to you. We wish you so much, and we'll see you on the campaign trail. Everybody check out his website and try to attend one of his events. Thank you again, Congressman, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And to my audience, guys, we'll see you next week. Don't miss the show. Have a good night.